We've reversed roles. This is Ken Double, and I get to interview Jack Moelmann as we continue with what would actually be Jack Moelmann Part 3. And it is July the 4th, 2012. We're at the LAX Marriott in Los Angeles, California. And Jack, delighted to have a chance to visit with you once again because we haven't covered enough about Jack Moelmann.
Well, thank you, Ken. It's a beautiful day out, almost.
Spectacular 4th of July, and we're doing this before we get sunset and all the fireworks cause problems with recording.
No, we're doing this before we have dinner.
That too. Jack, let's talk about a couple of things that are a little different than some of the subjects you carried on. You have been around the theater organ for a long, long time, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
Okay.
From this standpoint. If you had $100 to pay for a ticket, and there were, and I'll let you off the hook, not one, but if there were 3 players you wanted to hear play, and you'd plunk down a $100 ticket to hear them play, who would those be?
3 organists, right?
Yes.
Assuming they're the current ones.
No. Dead or alive?
Oh, dead or alive?
You're sure? If you could bring them back from the dead.
Okay. George Wright.
Surely.
Interestingly enough, because he was an exciting man, Gaylord Carter. To hear him play, not necessarily do a silent movie, and a contemporary one would be a cross between Lou Williams and Walt Stroni.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Gaylord Carter and the entertainment factor, because clearly, even today, I don't know that there was anybody that could present a concert and have as much fun in the concert as Gaylord Carter.
Well, Gaylord, and I knew him fairly well. He was one of these guys that, first of all, when he came into the auditorium and got on the organ bench or made announcements, he didn't care whether there was a microphone there or not. He could get up there and just shout. He wore loose clothes, usually some medallion in front, and he always started out with the song from the Amos and Andy show.
Perfect song.
Perfect song. And just had a great time with it, always had a flamboyant beginning and end, and he had fun, he enjoyed it all.
He knew how to communicate that fun to the audience so that the audience had fun.
My view on playing, and I tried to do the same thing, emulate organists. I want the audience to be part of what's going on. Don't sit there and play to the audience. Play with the audience. Have them participate. The applause is fine, but make them feel like they're part of it. Even have a little fun with them in commentary. I mean, I'm not the world's greatest organist, but I like to be an entertainer. I figure if you're going to want to hear something perfect, go buy a CD and listen to it.
Indeed. As we talk about Carter, it brings up an interesting question. Because the theater organ is so ingrained into silent film a novelty or an art form?
Well, first of all, this is an interesting interview because when I interviewed Ken, I didn't have note cards.
I did my homework, Jack.
He's got note cards. I forget the question.
Silent film, novelty or art form?
It's both. If you're a young person and never seen one, it's a novelty. You try to present it as an art form to both the young people, saying this is how it used to be. There are young people that always think that movies were in color and stereo and Dolby surround and all that. So it's both. It's a novelty to some, it's an art form to somebody else. It's an art form in the, trying to accompany one. Trying to adapt the music, if you're the organist, to adapt the music to what's going on in the film. So it's both.
Mm-hmm. You have the opportunity to play the wonderful Wurlitzer at the St. Louis Fox. There aren't but 2 of those left in the great big cavernous building. Is there a special thrill about playing that great organ?
Well, it is. Just from the fact that you're in that massive auditorium, I'm sitting on the bench of where some great organists sat, Stan Can being one of them, and some of the other people that are no longer with us occupied that bench. And just to sit there and play and listen to the sound roll around the theater, it's one of the bench, by the way, when you're playing it, the bench is the worst place in the auditorium to sit to hear the organ. I, on occasion, get somebody to record the thing and put the microphones up in the balcony, which is the best place to hear it. But it's a thrill to play that organ where greater people than me came before me, and maybe some greater people will follow me.
We can only hope. Tell me about the love affair between the city of St. Louis and Stan Can. They loved the man.
Interestingly enough, when it comes to Stan Can, St. Louis remembers him as the organist at the Fox. Outside of St. Louis, Los Angeles and other places, they remember him as a comic or a guest on the Johnny Carson show, Merv Griffin show. In most cases, out of town, they don't even know he played the organ. But he was and still is an icon in the St. Louis area.
And the stumbling, bumbling vacuum cleaner demo guy, that was not much of an act.
Well, I got to know Stan very well. I've known him for about 25 years. I became his assistant, I guess, at the Fox some 15 years before he died. When he was gone out of town, I played the tours. He played at a nightclub, a restaurant actually, in Belleville, which was in Illinois, close to where I live, and he'd come over to my house on Sunday nights and stay overnight so he didn't have to drive home. People thought that his bumbling around was an act. Well, it wasn't. I'll give you an example. One morning, he got up before I did. I forgot to put the coffee in the coffee pot. He found the instant coffee and didn't know what to do. He couldn't run the microwave oven. And I said, well, my hot water is hot enough. Why didn't you use that? Well, it's got one of those handles on it and he didn't know which way was the hot water. Another example, I had 3 little windmills out in the backyard. You know, these wooden things you set up there. And I got up and he says, Jack. I said, what? He says, there's something wrong with your windmills. I said, what? He says, they're not turning. Stanley, there's no wind.
That was Stan.
I mean, that's the way he was.
Yeah. Now, a trip to Jack Moelmann's house provides the opportunity to witness one of the most amazing musical creations ever. Tell us about your organ at the house.
Well, I had Hammonds for quite a few years. Being in the Air Force, I couldn't move much more around. In 1989, the opportunity came forth to get a Rogers 340 theater organ. To it, I added all the Wurlitzer percussions that I could find. A typical theater organ has chrysoglot, marimba, chimes, glockenspiel, the trash and bang, you know, the percussions and all. And then the pizza parlors go beyond that with such things as an accordion, a piano. Well, even some of the theater organs have a piano. I went so far as to make sure I had all of those things. And maybe too extreme. I've got 2 xylophones, 4 glockenspiels. My most recent addition is a trumpet en chamade, which is a loud state trumpet that's in the ceiling. At full organ, you can overpower anything in the room. And then dancing ducks and stuff. It's all exposed, accordion.
Jack, why did you put a toilet flush on the organ?
Well, because it was unique. Hector Oliveira was around one time, and he hit that by mistake. And but I have it on.
Hopefully not at the end of a ballad.
No, it's a 60. I bought this sampler, digital sampler, for about $2,500, and I brought the thing home, set it on the rack of equipment, and this other guy was with me, and I said, well, if we're gonna test it, we have to have something to sample. Well, there wasn't anything making any noise around there, so right around the corner was the bathroom. So I got a microphone stand and I sort of wrapped the wire around the microphone and dangled it in there and thought I would record it with the sampler and see what it did. So what we did is have somebody in the toilet pushing the, the handle, and somebody ready to push the microphone thing. And we did, and we got a wonderful recording of the toilet flush. In the process, the microphone somehow fell off the tripod and fell into the toilet. I drained the water out of it. That's the one I use for soloists when they come. But the toilet flush is the only. Mark Herman was at my house doing a concert in December. He used it quite effectively in the Blue Danube Waltz. I use it in a song like Anchors Away.
There you go.
I'm glad we stopped that subject.
Yes, we'll move on. Your career took you all over the country. Did you have the excitement of sneaking into an old theater and discovering an organ in a pit as you went to different parts of the country?
I learned how to do that because when I was in high school, the organist at the high school would take me out and we'd sneak into churches. And we'd go around and try, walk in the front door and find out where the key was hidden. They were normally in page 58 of the hymn book or tied to some little screw. I would go into old theaters as best I could, usually the stage door. The way you got into a theater, if you didn't belong there, is take a roll of 16 millimeter film and pretend like you have to get to the projection booth, otherwise the show won't start. So you need to act like you belong.
Yeah.
So you bring some equipment in with you. And I remember going into the theater in Greenfield, Massachusetts. They had a 3-manual something or other. I don't remember what it was. And I found out the power switch to turn on theater organs is not always right on the front of these things. You have to dig around. You have 2 choices to find the switch. One is on the console and the other is to go find where the blower is. Well, I found the switch to it and I was playing away. And they thought I was pretty good at playing the organ. I just stuck in the place. Somebody came up to me, I don't know who he was, and said, boy, you want to stick around and play before the movie starts? And I said, well, sure. How about intermission? Yeah, okay. I did. They didn't know who I was. I didn't know who they were. But I played it and they gave me $50.
Well, you can't beat that with a stick.
Well, the organ wasn't that great and I never came back.
Nothing else. Drinking money, as they say. Pocket money. Let's go back to a question you asked me in an earlier interview, and that is favorite instruments, the places you've had the opportunity to play that you really enjoyed yourself. And this is not to slight anyone, it's just a case of an organ that was just great fun to play.
Two places come to mind. One is the Alabama Theater. I played it before they enlarged it. I think they added 10, 12 ranks to the thing. And afterwards as well, because the thing matches the room. The most balanced organ, maybe not the biggest one, but the one that really sounded great that you never hear about, was in the Proctor's Theater in Schenectady, New York. It just balanced the regulation of the thing. Everything fit together. There wasn't anything that stood out, and I enjoyed that. It had the most fascinating lift on it. It operated by water. You'd push a button, you had 3 buttons, up, down, and stop. And that signaled the guy underneath the stage to turn the valves. Damnedest thing I've ever seen. But the organ sounded great.
I have great memories of seeing theater organ journals and seeing pictures of Jack Moelmann in performance in full military uniform, oftentimes around special holidays, Memorial Day, 4th of July, whatever. And there must be some special moments where your military connection and your music connection and a connection with the audience all came together.
Well, I was very proud to be in the Air Force. We had a white uniform, and I would wear that on occasion at concerts because the Air Force never found an occasion to wear the uniform. I paid $300 for it.
Get some
So
use
I
out of it.
decided I would wear it on some of the concerts. You'd wear it and you looked like you were an employee at Dairy Queen. But it reminds me of a time I was playing a concert at the Redford Theater in Detroit, Michigan. And I told the audience, I said, the Air Force has never found an opportunity to wear it, and it was turning yellow in my closet. Wouldn't you know, some smart spotlight operator turned it on yellow, and there I was. But the Air Force didn't interfere with what I wanted to do. They appreciated what I wanted to do. They sent me on a special trip to the Air Force Academy in 1972, I believe it was. I was the second military person to ever play the big organ in the Air Force Chapel, Air Force Academy Chapel. And it got me places. I was representing the Air Force in musical activities, and I never took advantage of it, but I think they liked that one of their military people was doing something to the community in a musical way, and that's about how that went.
Jack, if it hadn't been the military and the Air Force, what career would you have pursued, do you think?
Maybe like you, broadcasting. I don't know.
You got the gift of gab. Never met a stranger.
I was interested in electronics and music ever since I grew up. My father was an attorney, and he wanted me to be an attorney. And we used to watch Perry Mason all the time, and I said, I don't want to be one of those. But I don't know.
Well, you'd have been awesome in front of a jury.
Well, I used to be a very shy and bashful person.
I do not believe that for the first 10 seconds.
I did.
Wow.
And, being a lawyer, you know, you're out of order, you're overruled. I couldn't stand all that stuff. So it was a choice of being in music, and my parents hated music and despised the organ. But they finally, my mother came to certain events because she was proud of the fact that the audience enjoyed the music part of it. She didn't understand it. The only thing she ever told me is whenever you start a concert, play something you know.
That's what Gaylord Carter used to say.
Yeah, that's all the advice she ever gave me.
I'm going to ask a terrible question. Don't take this the wrong way, but I'm reminded of it by Johnny Carson once asked this, what do you want on your gravestone? And he said, I'll be right back. Just like they used to say going into the commercials. How do you want to be remembered?
On my gravestone?
Or whatever.
Just have a Jim Beam and Diet Coke on it. I don't know how I want to be remembered. I want to be remembered as maybe somebody that contributed something to something.
Yeah.
This whole theater organ society and the politics that goes with it, I try my best to provide some meaningful contribution to it. When I do a concert, the gratification I get is not the standing ovation, because when you get a standing ovation, it means they want to leave. I want people to leave with a smile on their face, be able to go home, and if somebody asks, well, what did he play? They can name a tune. Sometimes the organists get too esoteric in what they do. They get playing them back and forth to somebody else. I just want to be known as a fun type person that has a purpose, and that's to achieve something. And I'm not too sure what that is. There's a term called self-actualization, and it's in the pyramid of achievement. Do you ever get to self-actualization? No, because once you've arrived, there's no place to go. But you have a goal in what you're doing. You try to achieve it, and the ultimate objective is something that you can't achieve, but you try to get to it. Because once you've gotten there, you know, once you get in a car and drive on a trip, we're going to go to New York City to the Empire State Building. Once you've gotten there, you're there. What's after that?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, have goals and objectives that are realistic. Have a couple that aren't realistic, and do the best you can to get there. Work with the people around you. I like to be friends with everybody. There's some people I like better than others. Just ignore the others.
Well, if the goal and objective was to bring joy to the lives of a lot of people through music, Jack Moelmann, I would suggest you have been a success.
Well, I try. You know, I'm not the world's greatest organist, but I think I've said this, I'm an entertainer. If you hit a wrong note during the thing, you just call it an arrangement.
Indeed.
If you hit more than one note, you call it an improvisation. And there was one time in a church that I had to play in Peoria, Illinois. I was substituting at the church. That afternoon was a concert, going to be a concert by E. Power Biggs. He happened to come to the church, was there during the service. And somebody told me he was there, and they said, "Oh, are you all nervous?" And well, I was a nervous wreck, knowing that I was going to play the prelude and whatever the postlude was at the time. And then I thought about it. I said, I'm the one that they invited to play, not him.
Mm-hmm.
He came up afterwards and said I did okay.
Well, it doesn't get any better than that.
I know.
We've had an opportunity to do part 3 with Jack Moelmann. We're visiting with Colonel Jack Moelmann at the LAX Marriott Hotel in Los Angeles, California. This is July, not January, July 4th, 2012. And this has been part of the American Theater Organ Society's annual convention. Thanks, Jack, for your time once again. It's always fascinating.
Thank you.